Hello, welcome to another Q&A for the 2024 San Francisco Short Film Festival. This is the program, the Q&A for the program Frightening Tales, and we got some frightening shorts here, man. These guys made some scary movies. Hey, filmmakers, how you doing? Thanks for being here. Very cool. Bob, you're first on my screen. Where are you calling from, and what's your
Oakland.
film and your role? Identify yourself, please.
Yeah, I'm calling. My name is Bob Wolf. I'm calling from Oakland, California, just across the bay. Our film. I'm here with my co-filmmaker, Mike. Um, is The Egg Ghost,
Hey, Gus,
and
right on. Thanks for being here.
all
Hey,
right.
what was your role?
My role was co-producer with Mike, and I directed the movie here as we filmed it here.
Fantastic. And Mike, since you mentioned you're with the Egg Ghost. What was your role?
My role was writer, and producer, and I'm out in Seoul, South Korea at the
Wow.
moment. And our story is a South Korean story, so
Oh,
we
cool.
started with that, and we're pretty happy.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah,
But just remember, most people have already seen your film, so you don't need to worry about spoilers or anything like that. Sean,
got it.
hey, welcome. Where are you calling from? What's your film? And what role are you?
I'm calling from Malibu, California, and my film is Wake, and I'm the writer-director.
Right on. Thanks for being here. Hey, Pablo, you're next on my screen. Identify yourself, please. Introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, this is Pablo, the director, writer, and producer of the short film Voyager. I'm based in Valencia, Spain. The film was actually shot in Barcelona.
Cool. Thanks for being here. And hey, Jezreel, last but not least, introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jezreel Gandara. I am the a producer, co-writer, and director of The After.
Oh, a triple threat. And is your film, where are you calling from?
San Jose.
San Jose, okay. Neighbors, backyard. So, what was the inspiration for your film, Jezreel? What was the spark that started it all?
Yeah, I think for sure reflecting a lot on what it means to commit yourself to someone in marriage. And I think in this case, what does that mean? Like if you're committing yourself to that person's like body or soul, and in The After you see this Giselle deal with her husband being in a vegetative state and essentially soulless, and then she ends up finding out a lot more horror stuff that is just more of my interest. But overall, it just kind of is about that, like what is her relationship to this person, even though he's soulless and is in this vegetative state. What does that mean for her and she in her grieving moments? And then finding out this cult is behind it. So that's kind of a little bit about it.
Yeah, maybe not a film to watch if you're recently engaged or to get married. Well done. Pablo, how about you? What was the inspiration or the seed for the film, the spark for the film?
So we started working on Voyager a while back, I would say like 3, 4 years. It came up while I was reading a short story about astral projection. I thought that, I mean, I've always been interested by the theme, but I actually reading the story, I was like really taken aback because I thought that it hasn't been represented enough in film. Maybe it's a really interesting subject and a really interesting way to create a story, and I would just fell in love with the concept. And slowly I started like finding out what exactly the film was going to talk about, and ended up being this sort of I really like anti-heroes. I really like sort of twisted characters that slowly progress into becoming more and more corrupted.
Hmm.
And in our story, I thought that having her, the protagonist, slowly corrupt herself while astral projecting was a interesting idea. So I just made a mix between a neo-noir thriller, a classical thriller, those I really like, and a fantasy film. And it was a mix of the two, and I think that they don't usually, you don't see many thrillers with fantasy elements. And I thought that it was an interesting mix.
Yeah,
And yeah, so I started slowly started creating the story, and the character just came on its own.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You did well with that. You created a nice mix, nice mood, nice tone. All these films, mood and tone. Sean, what was the inspiration for your film?
I think I was always curious about taking this sort of familiar genre monster that we're used to seeing in a very kind of cartoonish or kind of glamorous way, and seeing if I could kind of grounded in some kind of real world feeling situation. And I started to think about this idea that, vampires can get in your head. They can use sort of they can kind of hypnotize you. And I thought that the feeling of going crazy in the presence of a vampire, I thought would be an interesting sort of correlation to dementia. And so I sort of used the dementia aspect of it to feel to just to kind of root that idea in
Yeah,
something more
yeah.
real world.
Let me, before I jump to the other guys, what about why a short film? Did the material just say this has to, because I thought yours maybe, you could expand it into a feature possibly, but did you choose I'm going to make a short, or this is just what the material says it wants to be?
I chose to shoot part of a feature I'm working on. Yeah.
Good, I can't wait to see it. Right on.
Thank you.
And what about Egg Ghost? Uh, what was the inspiration? You said the folklore or the legend from a South Korean fable?
That's right. That's right. Bob, you
Yeah,
want to
you
go
want-
first? Or you want me to go first?
Sure, sure. So
Well,
for me, I won't speak for Mike, but the inspiration came, and I still remember our conversation, maybe 2 years ago. So we were just batting around ideas. I think we were both drawn to making movies and horror for some reason. But he was living in South Korea, so he suggested, well, why don't we do a folk tale? And I have a good one that I would suggest, this Korean one. And I said, okay, well, that's pretty interesting. And I think also I know Mike, I think you do too. I thought it was a good chance to share some culture through a horror tale, because we set it in San Francisco, but it's a Korean tale that's been done before, but it's never been done outside of Korea. So we thought we would just
And how are you guys connected? Were you already friends before this? Were you in Korea when you were collaborating long distance or what?
both. We were friends before this, and we collaborated entirely while he was in Korea. I was in Oakland.
I guess I should ask, are you still friends today after making a movie?
No, just not after this.
yeah, not after this. Yeah,
No.
yeah. First, I'd like to say, I'm honored to be in the presence of these great filmmakers. We live in empowering times where storytellers are able to tell their stories with ease, without control, and I think these are just exciting times. What Bob and I wanted to do was something a little bit different, which I think we pulled off, which is tell existing um, folklore stories with a modern context. And in this way, we educate the public, be it local to that culture or globally, about this different culture, but yet tell it in a context of modern day. You take the Egg Ghost is an old story in Korea, and we move that story into a modern context where you can relate to it and really kind of understand these cultural stories from around the globe. And we started to pick stories that were very little known. So we didn't pick the classic folklore stories that you heard, but we picked stories that you may have never heard of that are interesting. And we've got a ton of them in the queue. The Egg Ghost is the first one. Bob made the magic happen. We collaborated on it, and we're just excited that this is the first one, and
Now,
we got many more to come.
did you guys, is this, what do you call it? Intellectual property you had to acquire or anything, or just because it's a folktale, it's just,
It's in the public domain. So that's part of the magic in it, is that these stories are all 100% in the public domain. Again, they're little known. For instance, when you talk about the Egg Ghost, Bob was informing me that he was talking to a lot of Korean contacts that he had, and they were like, "Egg Ghost? I've never heard of that, or
Right.
I've tangentially heard of that." So it's very just exciting and fulfilling to tell these stories.
yeah. And that lends itself well to storytelling and filmmaking. So glad you guys picked it, indeed. Um, and maybe what was a challenge then, if acquiring intellectual property wasn't an issue? What was a challenge for your collaboration for making this movie? I'll ask this to everybody. What was the challenge for you guys?
I'll let Bob handle that one.
Uh,
I mean, it was easy because I was just writing.
ah,
I mean, with ideas. Bob was the boots on the ground. He was the guy that made the magic happen. He worked with the actors. He did the editing. We just put peanut butter and jelly together and made that
well,
sandwich.
oh
But
yeah.
all the
Well, not
challenges
to
fell on Bob.
not to dismiss writing. That's not very easy for me. So well done. But Bob, what were some of the challenges?
One challenge was the story itself. There's very little known about how the egg ghost operates. So we made up a lot of characteristics for this ghost. We did. We invented, because it wasn't very interesting. Most of the tales you hear describe the egg ghost as a woman with no face who kills you like a serial killer, and that's it. There's no other information. So we had to add a little bit of we had to weave in a little bit of a story just to make it interesting.
Yeah.
That was a
Right.
big challenge.
Right on. See, Mike, that's part of writing. That's a tough thing. What about you, for Jezreel, for your creation? Any challenging things? Was writing hard? What about the movie was challenging for you?
Yeah, I think for sure. So to even your previous questions, we do have like a feature on the way for this concept as well. And so trying to tell at least like the first part of the film in a short film, I think that's always the hardest thing, to just compact a story, a well-told story in such a short amount of time. And so definitely for writing, I co-wrote it with my friend Ray, and we just went back and forth a lot because we have a lot of lore to it, and so a lot of background for the short as well. And that kind of made it hard to just compress into 14 minutes, into 15 minutes. And so I would say that's the hardest part overall, to just kind of compact the story very well.
Yeah, yeah. Did you cut a lot in post and editing?
I did. We we did have a lot of scenes that I loved very much, but when it came down to the editing, I just had to cut it out for the sake of the story and for the sake of time. And so yeah, that's kind of the game of it, right?
Yeah, yeah, sure
You
is.
got, you got a
Uh,
whole series on the floor, huh?
Yeah, or even, I'm a filmmaker too, where if you have a whole scene you set up and it's not even needed for the story, and you didn't find that on the paper, right? And it's like you cut it in the editing room. Like, I spent some time on that. Sean, challenges making your movie.
Um, are we focusing more on the writing or both writing or
You
production?
tell me.
Okay. I definitely a challenge was we shot in a morgue, so finding a good morgue
Ah,
that was affordable anywhere near the city of Los Angeles was actually very challenging. Where we ended up landing was in a morgue that was in a real cemetery, but the morgue wasn't real. Because this cemetery gets so much movie business that they're like, what's like a death adjacent thing that filmmakers might want to film while they're filming at our cemetery. So they built themselves a fake morgue with drawers that don't really open and all that stuff. So it's the most Hollywood thing possible that there's a fake morgue in a real cemetery. I reckon you guys don't have that in San Jose. There's probably not any fake morgues for filming. But
I'm
that's
glad you shared that. That was definitely more of an interesting challenge story than maybe hard writing it, So thank you for sharing that. And you know what? A lot of times the challenges go and improve the film by luck or by chance, like finding the right location.
Mhm.
Pablo, any difficulties making your movie? Or a piece of cake?
Yeah, no, yes, definitely a lot. So Voyager was actually made as our thesis film in film school. So that came with a lot of difficulties, of course, mainly that we were working with a full student crew.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, having a professional looking film with a low budget and also a student crew was pretty hard. But I'm really happy. I think we had a really, really great team. I really enjoyed working with them. And there was a lot of passion behind. I think that one of the good things of having a student crew is that we're all of us were pouring our hearts out, which
Did you
was
have-
great.
Yeah. Did you have teacher mentors? Did you have mentors, professionals there as well, or was it just student
I mean,
across?
on the shooting, we didn't. I mean, there was supposed to be some mentoring on the on the screenplay, but I mean, the guy who was mentoring us, which is actually a friend of mine now. I mean, it was just more so for the fun, and also the imposed deadlines that they gave us. But actually, I mean, they didn't have much of a hand in the film, which I think is great. I mean, I really like the fact that the film stands out as different compared to the kind of films that came out of that film school.
Yeah.
And also in terms of the screenplay, kind of the same. We were actually hoping to make the feature. Of course, budget wise, we had to go with a short. And what we did was actually take the 3 acts from the feature and condense them into a short film. So not the usual taking the first or last act or a scene and turning into a short. We actually took the whole arc, and that came with a lot of trouble in the writing process. Because I mean, it's a big arc, it's a corruption arc, it's a turning into villain story, and compacting that into a short is pretty difficult.
Yeah.
But yes, the idea was just to try to get as many things as possible into the short, so that the proof of concept kind of takes more, and people
then-
can see
then
what
the-
we want to do.
Yeah. Then the short works as a whole itself, as a beginning, middle, end. That's what you want. You want each scene to work as a beginning, middle, end kind of thing, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, you did that. Now, in all these films too, you guys, speaking of like production value, production quality, all looking great. They're high end looking, with a lot of, tone and mood. You really create this sense of space and stuff like that. How'd you do that? Sean, we know part of it was you actually found a morgue in the cemetery, or you recreated a morgue in the cemetery. So finding location, but your actors are brilliant. The lighting's really good. I mean, your space in your film is frightening.
I appreciate that. Well, I think talking about how limitations kind of push you, I actually didn't really like that morgue. And when you walk into the room on a location scout and you turn on the lights, it looks kind of cheesy. It looks kind of student filmy. There's a lot of little details that just don't quite look like that's what a real morgue should be. And so I always had this sort of conceit, because the story takes place during a hurricane, that the lights would start to go out over the course of the movie. And I just moved that to the very beginning of the movie, so that you don't have to see all the details of the morgue. There's a lot of metallic surfaces, so we just have a work light that's put over the morgue, and that kind of makes the room kind of sparkle with all the little reflections on it. But you can't really look at the cheesy signs and the kind of plasticky looking props. And
Wonderful.
so I think that sort of pushed me into a moodier experience than you might have even otherwise had.
Indeed, that's one of my notes. Like really moody, great lighting, lack of lighting, if you will, because the reasons you just said. And, yeah, it looks fantastic. It totally puts you in that morgue. I mean, I'm glad I didn't screen these at nighttime before bed. And what about the after? You guys, for a lot of it too, low light, seems like you're shooting at night. I mean, there's the interior scenes during the day and stuff when they're, the main characters are talking to each other, but a lot of nighttime shots, no?
Yeah. And like you were saying as well, location kind of helped a lot. Came through a friend, and we were able to shoot at her house for a while. That was a beautiful ranch. And then we had access to horses, which was another aspect we weren't expecting. But when we shot it, my strength falls more on like this creepiness and like jump scares and stuff like that. And so whenever I feel like my strength is there, so therefore I lean more into that lingering shots of just weird things, and then on top of that using sound to kind of amplify that. For sure, a lot of it was the editing. A lot of it was, all of it was pre-planned, but I think the lingering, the long shots is kind of where I feel like the tension is built, the scare or the creepiness. And yeah, the location was beautiful. We had a ranch to ourselves to shoot for 3 days, and so difficult to shoot in 3 days, but still a beautiful place that we were able to make it creepy at night, especially.
Yeah. Some good points there. Yeah, lots of the tension was created in the slow, still shots and the music. Hey, Bob and Mike, talk about those kind of elements of thriller, horror, scary films.
I think, yeah. Well, I think the art. We also were very constricted in where we could shoot. So we actually wrote the movie around the house that it was filmed in. In other words, we basically had the concept and then had the house and then wrote the plot. So we wrote the plot around the house, making that a big feature in the movie, long hallways and going under the house and everything.
That's great.
So every plot point was written with some part of the house in mind. And we didn't, except for one scene, we didn't use, just because it was too difficult to make it look good, we didn't use anything except the lighting that was there. So it was all just practical lights. It was all just the lights in the room. And we just kind of said, screw it, we're just going to film it with this. It was just too complicated to film with extra lighting, except for one last scene where we had really bright lights. But we were lucky because the house is one of these old Victorian houses in San Francisco, and it has a lot of creepy hallways and stairways and overly lit bathrooms, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
so we
it
just
worked well.
basically used what was there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, I was going to say, and I wanted to take a step back to talk about our process a little bit and why we chose to do a short, which may be a little bit different than some of the other great responses that you got. Our overall overreaching goal is to create a series of short features around these different ghost stories from around the world, right? And then create a pitch package and then pitch these to streaming media. So the reason we did the shorts was as an example of the type of stories that we'll be telling. So that's just the first one, but we want to um, bring in other directors and other methods of storytelling so that we can show diversity in not only the story making, but in how you do the filming and putting those things out. That's what we're working on. So this is just a small piece or foundational piece of a much larger story a much larger project that we're working on. It's ambitious, but what isn't, right?
Right.
So I just want to take a step back and kind of talk about why we're taking this.
Yeah, right on. Well, excited to hear that. I don't know if you guys can hear too. The Blue Angels are flying over as part of Fleet Week, so I hope that doesn't interrupt too much. But also, let's talk about for horror thrill films, the elements that you use. How much attention, focus do you guys give to sound or audio or music or effects? Because it plays a big part in making the thriller work. Bob and Mike, I'm on you still, so why don't you guys answer?
Sure. Yeah, so for effects, we kind of centered it around two big effects moments. And we, in some ways, we made the movies so we could do these effects. But
What effects are they? Which ones?
one was having the ghost float above a table and make that realistic.
And
And then
scary.
the other one was having the ghost drag somebody without touching them down a hallway.
Another freaking
Um,
scary moment. I remember those. That was frightening.
So that so so yeah, we were definitely focused on those two moments. The rest of the movie is a lot of people talking, but and story. But those two moments were a big. They took a lot of prep. Like we had to build a sled to pull the guy down the hallway on, and make sure that it slid easily on the carpet. So a lot of trips to Home Depot, and yeah. So there was a big focus on the effects, at least for us. Yeah.
And the great singing of Adiron by
Oh,
Sugi,
for music.
which
Yeah.
was absolutely fantastic. But yeah, when from our perspective, from just like a viewer fan perspective, even though we wrote it, when Bob got finished with the sound on that drag scene, I tell you, everyone who watched it was just awestruck. I mean, Bob did an amazing job of putting the right tempo, the right bass together so that you felt as if you were part of this dramatic scene. And it's really a great culmination of the film. So
You
even
re-
though I'm part of the team, I
Yeah.
still give kudos to Bob for that.
Yeah. You remember, Mike, you remember when it came together, you added that final layer of audio, sound effects, whatever, and it just took the scare to the next level.
So it's all about sound, right, guys? So that's the mood. Yeah.
That's right. They say it's at least
So-
half percent of the movie, 50% of the movie. What about you, Pablo? How important was your audio for your film? What kind of focus or time did you spend on it?
I think it was really important. I mean, it was pretty difficult to get it right on the shooting because the film has a lot to do with trucks and like bodies, so that was a little bit of a headache for the sound guy. But in post production, we went all out on the concept for the audio. It's a story of someone that's isolated from her world. So we played a lot with how she hears the things outside of the truck and inside of the truck. Besides that, of course, I think we played a lot with the music. I think that it was something really important, as we don't have outright scares or screamers or anything like that. It's more of a psychological thriller, I would
Yeah.
say.
Mhm.
We didn't have to lean that much on the big audio moments, and it was more of like setting the tone, setting the mood, sort of giving this city and this world of the character a personality through the sound. Joan, who's the sound guy, he did the sound in the shooting and also post production, was really great. He really quickly connected with what I wanted to do with the character, and took the audio to develop her as a character. So yeah, that's more of so with the audio.
Yeah, and then Sean, also, as I said before, your film really creates a sense of space with all the elements. How important was music, audio, sound effects to create that? I mean, you got the rainstorms, the thunderstorms, the hurricane. You got the sound of the space. You know, I just remember it being very, very moody. The tone was great.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I had an almost religious devotion to getting the sound right. I was very, very, I was so lucky to have my sound mixer Ethan Beagle and my sound designer Dave Barnaby. Like we all just like were agonizing over every creaking groan of the building, every gust of wind. For me, it wasn't just like throwing a bunch of storm sounds and that's the background. It was very much like sort of tailoring it to whatever sort of dramatic energy you wanted to feel in any given moment. So if things were starting to escalate between characters, then you would start to feel that energy increase sort of subconsciously, and then taking things out, dropping the sound out almost to nothing when you want to kind of really like have that like waiting for pins and needles in suspense moments.
Or even silence.
Yeah, the silence I think is probably the part that people take away from it the most when it gets quiet. And an amazing composer who, I mean, you can't tell, and probably they can't even tell anymore, where the line between music and sound design ends, because the music is very soundscapey, and does a lot to kind of push things when you
I think
realize.
a lot of these films, I'm sorry, cutting you off, but you're inspiring me. It's like I remember your film, like I could almost just listen to your film. I don't know, without and it'd be just as effective with just the audio track, if you will. Is there any trivia kind of question answer for sound effects? Like you substitute a different sound effect for what we're seeing on the screen? I just thought it's now. If not, like for the sliding the body across the hallway floor, guys, in the Egg Coast, what'd you use for that?
What was the sliding? I think that it was sound effects I found on Artlist, but it was some sort of like carpety sound. It wasn't all that inventive, but the one thing that I did like was I did get a chance to use my 6-month-old son's squawking in one part when the ghost was floating, because he was making some very creepy sounds. So I recorded him and I threw it in. Like kind of that kind of thing. So,
Sean, did you have an answer to that question?
Yeah, well, I have this sort of feeling with jump scares, because there's definitely a number of jump scares in my movie. But I came to this conclusion that if I put a stinger on a jump scare where it was just a fake scare, where like nobody actually got attacked, nothing bad actually happened. If I put a stinger, it felt like a cheat. Like it felt like, hey, I put this music that's like something really scary happened, but nothing really scary happened. So I was like, how can I do it just with sound design? So, for example, there's a part where a woman kind of taps somebody on the shoulder and they spin around really fast and they gasp. And, it wanted a stinger because that would make people jump out of their seats. So how can I do it without it? And so I use this when she spins. We use the sound of a soda can crunching with a really sharp, like way more sharp than would be in real life, like cut in on her gasping sound that was like super amplified and like high pitched. And that kind of combination of sounds kind of still had that kind of slapping kind of instant hits quality.
Wonderful. Love it. Jezreel, how about you? Like how important was sound? What kind of consideration did you give?
Yeah, I was lucky to work with John at SoundRatch, and he did a lot of the soundtracks, and he killed it with that. And a lot of that is also soundscapey or a little bit more lingering type of music. And like I was saying earlier, it's because I feel like that's more my strength, and I lean more into that type of long shots. Takes a while to get there, and then on the other end, on the sound itself, the sound effects, I did it myself which is for better or for worse. But I was able to once again lean into that lingering sounds, and using I didn't necessarily use a different sound to like this have like emotion or something like that, but like more the sound effects of a tree cracking or something like that. That's always been something that I felt was very weird and very like the slow cracks of it is what kind of brings some eeriness to it. And so I use like different weird sounds that I've heard in the past, and especially lingering sounds to build that tension.
Right on. Appreciate that so much. So, Jezreel, since I'm still on you though, what's a takeaway? What's one thing you learned? What was a highlight?
Yeah.
The whole process, the whole movie making.
Yeah, I think as especially now pursuing the feature, I'm learning more to just let go of things
Huh.
to other people, delegate stuff. And I mean, it all comes down to budget as well. But like overall, like I'm trying not to do the editing. I'm trying not to do the sound. I'm trying not to do these other aspects and just focus on one specific thing. All of it obviously deals with budget at the end of the day, but yeah, trying to learn more to just delegate better. And I think in the Bay Area, especially, like there's a good film culture to just get people on board, and
Yeah.
the attitude is great, and uh, the the experience to be on set with other people from the Bay Area is really good. So just leaning more into that as I'm pursuing the feature as well.
Right on. Yeah. It is a collaborative process after all, right? Pablo, are you still a film student?
No, no, that was actually the last thing I did in film
You
school,
graduated.
thankfully. Yeah.
So what's the takeaway? What'd you learn about yourself, about filmmaking?
I mean, it was, I think for me and for most of the crew, especially the head of departments, I think it was a huge learning experience for all of us. I think or what I always do with my films, sort of try to put myself in a situation that I have to make a film bigger than what I know what to do at that time. So when I made Voyager, I think that my skill set was like below what was required for Voyager. So because you have to end up making the film, you learn to do all the stuff you're missing. So I learned a lot of things, but especially, yes, I would say delegating was a big process. I've always been like one-man army kind
Yeah.
of guy with all my previous short films, and this was the first time I actually delegated in all my head of departments. I learned a lot on how to, well, production wise, it was my first big film. Also on distribution. And overall, I feel like it was my first professional experience as a filmmaker. So it was like jumping into the pool and just sort of seeing what happens.
Yep. Yeah, the best way to make films or learn about films is to make them. Sean, did you learn anything? Or what was the highlight?
Well, the highlight of it was the hardest and sort of biggest learning experience I would say was in uh shooting this opening shot in the rain of this girl lying in a puddle. And my actress I put under the basically half submerged in this water. It was a cold night. And we were putting boiling water into this puddle to try to just keep it warm and keep her comfortable and just have everything ready. And and even with all this like preparation, it still became just really challenging for her. And my costume designer had said to me, like, we should have bought a wetsuit to put it under her dress. Like that would have made all the difference. And I was like, it's like that would have made all the difference. And we just, you're thinking about a million things in prep. Of course, had I just had an hour to just be like, what can we do to make it more comfortable? And I just think, for me, the push was like just even more. Like if you're worried, if it's the kind of thing where somebody's like comfort is really being challenged, then you want to just even though you think you're doing a lot, just keep thinking about it.
You can never do enough pre-production, right?
Yeah.
Sean, Bob, or I'm sorry, Bob, Mike, and on you guys. What'd you learn? What's a highlight, takeaway? Bob, you go first, please.
Sure. So I learned a ton from my good friend Mike. just collaborating overseas. So we were only on the phone, and there was a lot of, hey, I want to do this in this scene. Can you check with your Korean contacts to see if that's kosher with this folktale, right? Can we push the story this way? Is that okay? We didn't want to like completely butcher the folktale as we adapted it. So that was a great learning experience. I also learned how long it takes to edit something. I mean, to make it a good edit. That took many, many months, limited time with a full-time job, and so a lot of late nights. So that was interesting to see what the scope of a movie that long entails.
Yeah.
And then, but the highlight I think was
Yeah,
I made a good friend out of our 92-year-old actress, and she's Korean American, and so we're in touch, and we
Awesome.
we hang out every now and then. So that was really nice, just like meeting people I would never have met,
Yeah.
and also seeing the performance of the woman who played the ghost. She's a professional dancer. I literally just said, do whatever you want, like. This is what we're going for, but you make it up, and she blew my mind. So that was nice to have that surprise, right? Like I envisioned something, and she just took it to a different level, and we just went with that. So it was really really interesting.
Good casting. Mike, I'll end on you. Last but not least, takeaway, highlight, what'd you learn?
Yeah, my takeaway is a little bit different than these talented filmmakers that are part of this panel. My takeaway was more that this idea of a larger pool of storytelling that takes this collective stories together and then tells them in a way that's impactful, I think is absolutely attainable. And being a part of a film festival like this one is so exciting because it also validates the interest, right? So it takes something from an idea phase into something that's real, and it just creates this motivation that was there, but it's even more on steroids now. And then when you see the films from these other filmmakers, you can see the talent that's out there too, that we can perhaps ally ourselves with as Bob and I put together these packages. So
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
Right on, right on. Well, we learned that we love short films and we love your films. That's why we're in our film festival. Thank you for being here, filmmakers. Congratulations. Not only getting in our film festival, just making a short film, finishing a film. Well done. I hope to meet you guys in person. And in the meantime, everybody, thank you for watching this Q&A as part of the San Francisco Independent Short Film Festival. Check out more great films at sfindie.com. Bye, filmmakers. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Bye. Thanks for having
All
me.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.